The investor arrived at the event a little early. The room was buzzing with people in suits, talking about opportunities, investments, and big deals. It was one of the most talked about networking events in the city, and everyone who was anyone in business seemed to be there. The investor was calm, confident, and prepared. He had been to many events like this before, but today felt different. There was one person he wanted to meet more than anyone else in the room, the CEO of a company that had been making waves in the industry. The CEO was already in the room, speaking with a small group of executives. She was known for being powerful, influential, and sometimes intimidating. She carried herself with confidence, and it was clear she was used to being the center of attention. People admired her, but some also feared her. The investor had heard stories about her, how she sometimes dismissed people she didn't think were important. He didn't let that worry him. He knew who he was and what he had to offer. As the investor walked toward the CEO, he noticed a few eyes following him. Some people whispered, others simply stared. The atmosphere felt heavy, filled with anticipation. The CEO noticed him too. She looked him up and down with a sharp glance that seemed to measure him instantly. Instead of smiling or extending her hand, she looked away and continued talking with her group. The investor paused for a moment. He had expected many things, but not this cold reaction. A brief flicker of surprise crossed his mind, but he quickly pushed it aside. He was used to being underestimated, and he knew that first impressions could be misleading. He straightened his posture, approached her, and said politely, "Good afternoon. I wanted to introduce myself." The CEO barely acknowledged him. She gave a small nod but didn't offer a handshake. Her body language was distant, almost dismissive. People around them noticed. Some looked uncomfortable. The investor smiled slightly, keeping his composure. He knew that reacting negatively would not help him. He simply said, "I understand you are very busy. Perhaps we can talk later." She waved him off with a hand, a gesture that clearly indicated she wasn't interested in engaging. The investor didn't argue or show frustration. He thanked her politely and stepped back. The moment felt awkward, not just for him, but for the room. There was a silence for a few seconds as people processed what had just happened. The CEO returned to her conversation, while the investor moved to a quieter corner, blending into the crowd and observing the rest of the event. Even though the encounter didn't go as he had hoped, the investor didn't feel defeated. He knew that respect and opportunity were earned over time. He watched her closely, noticing the way she interacted with others. She commanded attention and expected it from everyone around her. Yet, he also noticed subtle signs that she wasn't fully in control of every situation. Small moments of doubt, quick glances at her phone, minor interruptions in her speech. These details didn't go unnoticed by someone trained to read people. The investor decided to mingle and network with others first. He spoke to entrepreneurs, listened to their ideas, and offered insights when appropriate. People were drawn to his confidence and knowledge. By the time he returned to observing the CEO, he had already made several meaningful connections. He realized that influence wasn't just about the title or position. It was about what you could offer and how you treated people along the way. Meanwhile, the CEO continued her conversations, unaware that the investor had been quietly making an impression on many others in the room. Some of her colleagues noticed and whispered among themselves. "That investor is impressive," one said. Another nodded. "He handles rejection with such grace. Not many could do that." Their words eventually reached her ears, though she didn't react immediately. The investor didn't let pride or anger take over. Instead, he focused on the bigger picture. He reminded himself that this was just the first step, not the end. Opportunities could come in unexpected ways, and patience often yielded better results than force. He was prepared to wait for the right moment, confident that his skills and reputation would speak for themselves. As the evening went on, the CEO noticed more people approaching him. Each interaction seemed to reinforce the fact that he was respected and valued by those around him. She began to realize that her initial dismissal might not have been the wisest move. She felt a subtle shift in the energy around him, an aura of competence and calm that could not be ignored. For the first time that day, She wondered if she had misjudged him. The investor continued to move through the room, making notes in his mind, observing, and strategizing. He knew that one encounter didn't define the entire opportunity. In business, timing and perception were everything. By remaining professional and composed, he was already planting seeds for future interactions. Every polite conversation, every thoughtful question, every respectful nod was building his reputation quietly but powerfully. The event began to wind down, but the energy didn't fade. The CEO finally took a moment alone, looking around the room. She couldn't help but notice how many people had spoken highly of the investor. His calm demeanor, intelligence, and experience had left a mark on the evening. She realized that her behavior yesterday had not only been noticeable but potentially costly if she didn't act soon. As the investor prepared to leave, he reflected on the night. Despite the initial cold reception, he had gained insight into the dynamics of influence, respect, and perception. He had not lost anything by remaining polite and composed. On the contrary, he had demonstrated strength, patience, and professionalism. The evening had set the stage for the next move, and he knew that the CEO might soon recognize the value he brought. The investor walked out with quiet confidence, understanding that real power often comes not from arrogance or dismissiveness, but from skill, respect, and integrity. The CEO, meanwhile, was left to reflect on the missed opportunity and the unexpected impression this man had made on everyone in the room. Little did she know, this encounter was only the beginning, and tomorrow would bring a twist that would change the dynamic completely. After the event, the investor returned to his office, thinking about the evening and the people he had met. While the encounter with the CEO had been cold and dismissive, he did not let it affect his confidence. He had seen this kind of behavior before, and he knew that respect and influence were earned through patience, skill, and the results one could deliver. The investor had built his career over years of careful planning, learning from successes and failures alike. He had started small, investing in local businesses and helping them grow. Over time, his reputation had grown, not just because of his financial success, but because of the integrity and professionalism he showed in every interaction. People trusted him because he treated them with respect, listened carefully, and offered guidance rather than commands. His approach had turned small opportunities into major ventures, and he had learned the power of quiet influence. He reviewed some of his recent successes to remind himself of his experience. One company he had invested in had been struggling to launch a product, but with his support and advice, they had managed to turn it into one of the most successful launches of the year. Another startup had faced legal and logistical challenges, but with his guidance, they had overcome obstacles that seemed impossible. The investor knew that his ability to see the potential in others, to guide and support without overstepping, was what made him valuable. The CEO, meanwhile, had returned to her office, but she could not shake the memory of the investor. Despite her dismissal, his presence lingered in her mind. She was used to being in control, used to people reacting to her authority rather than challenging it. But this investor had been calm, composed, and unshaken by her behavior. She felt a mixture of surprise and unease. For the first time in a long time, someone had walked into her world without being intimidated, and it had made her curious. The next morning, the investor began preparing for his next meetings. He reviewed the companies he planned to speak with, noting potential areas where he could offer insight or support. He believed in thorough preparation and wanted to make every conversation meaningful. His attention to detail and focus on relationships rather than just transactions had earned him respect in every circle he entered. Back at her office, the CEO started receiving messages from her colleagues about the investor. They spoke of his track record, his influence, and the respect he commanded in the business community. Some even mentioned how professional and composed he had been during the event, even in the face of her dismissiveness. She read the messages with a growing sense of realization. She had underestimated him, and the consequences of that mistake were starting to become clear. The investor continued his routine, but he was also aware of the CEO's presence in the room during the previous event. He had observed her interactions, noted the subtle moments of hesitation, and understood that power alone did not always guarantee respect. True influence came from the ability to act with wisdom, treat others fairly, and recognize value where it existed. He carried these principles with him into every meeting, every decision, and every conversation. During the day, he met with several entrepreneurs who sought his advice. He listened to their ideas, asked thoughtful questions, and offered suggestions that showed his deep understanding of both business and people. They left the meetings feeling encouraged and supported, and word of his approach spread. People appreciated that he was not just seeking to invest for personal gain, but genuinely wanted to help businesses grow. This reputation had become a cornerstone of his career. Meanwhile, the CEO could not stop thinking about the investor. She began to research his past projects, his investments, and the impact he had on the companies he supported. She found articles and interviews detailing his approach, highlighting not only his financial success, but also his ability to mentor, guide, and inspire. The more she learned, the more she realized that he was not just another investor. He was someone who could open doors she had not even imagined. As the day went on, the CEO reflected on her own behavior at the event. She had acted on instinct, assuming that someone who did not immediately display status or power was not worth her time. That assumption had been wrong. She felt a mix of frustration at her own misjudgment and respect for the investor's calm and professional demeanor. She understood that if she wanted to achieve her goals, she would need to approach him differently, with humility and genuine interest. The investor, meanwhile, remained unaware of the growing attention from the CEO. He focused on his work, building relationships and assessing opportunities. He believed that his actions and results would speak louder than any first impression or cold reception. His patience was not passive. It was deliberate, strategic, and rooted in confidence. He knew that the right moment to make a connection would come, and he intended to be ready. Throughout the day, the investor thought about the qualities that made someone truly influential. He considered integrity, empathy, professionalism, and the ability to see value in others. These traits had allowed him to navigate challenges, overcome prejudice, and build a network of strong, mutually beneficial relationships. He understood that power without respect was fragile, and that true influence came from consistency and character. The CEO, on the other hand, began to reconsider her approach to people in general. She realized that dismissing someone based on appearances, assumptions, or status could cost her opportunities. She thought about the impact the investor could have on her company and her career if she approached him with the right mindset. She recognized that she needed to balance confidence with humility, and that genuine respect could open doors that pride alone could not. By the end of the day, both the investor and the CEO were reflecting on the same event, but from very different perspectives. The investor had used the encounter as a learning moment, observing, analyzing, and reinforcing his principles. The CEO had begun to recognize the consequences of her behavior and the value of the person she had initially dismissed. The stage was set for the next interaction, one that would challenge both their assumptions and test their professionalism. The investor was prepared to continue demonstrating his value through action, patience, and respect. The CEO was beginning to understand that her initial response had been a mistake, and that she would need to approach the situation differently if she wanted to benefit from the opportunity in front of her. As the day closed, the investor reviewed his notes and made plans for follow-up conversations. He knew that influence was built over time and that every interaction mattered. The CEO, in contrast, was planning her next move, considering how to reach out, how to express interest, and how to show respect without losing her own sense of authority. Both were aware that the next encounter would be pivotal, though they each understood it in very different ways. The investor left the office with a quiet confidence, knowing that the right combination of patience, skill, and professionalism would lead to opportunities. The CEO, meanwhile, sat back and reflected, realizing that power was not just about status but about perception, respect, and the ability to recognize talent when it appeared. The encounter at the event had planted a seed, one that would soon grow into a situation neither of them could ignore. The following morning, the CEO woke with a mix of determination and nervous anticipation. She knew she had to act quickly if she wanted to turn the situation in her favor. The message she had sent to the investor the previous day had been concise, professional, and sincere, but now she had to prepare for the possibility that he would accept a meeting. She went over every detail in her mind, thinking about how to convey respect without seeming desperate and how to present her ideas clearly and confidently. Meanwhile, the investor started his day with a sense of calm focus. He checked his emails and noticed the CEO's message. It was professional and direct, acknowledging the previous encounter and expressing a desire to meet. He appreciated the honesty and thoughtfulness in her words. Unlike many who might react defensively or with flattery, she had approached him with clarity and genuine intent. This immediately piqued his interest. He knew that agreeing to a meeting would not be a simple formality. It would require both sides to engage seriously, with professionalism and respect. The CEO spent the morning preparing for the meeting. She reviewed her company's latest projects, noting areas where collaboration could be mutually beneficial. She considered the investor's strengths, his influence, and the insights he had provided in past ventures. She wanted to demonstrate not just what her company could offer, but also her recognition of his value. She practiced the key points she wanted to make, ensuring that her presentation would be clear, focused, and respectful. When the meeting time arrived, the investor entered the office with his usual calm demeanor. He was observant, noting the CEO's posture, expressions, and the arrangement of the room. He could tell immediately that she had prepared thoughtfully and that she was taking this interaction seriously. This recognition set the tone for the conversation. He was not there to judge or punish her for the previous day. He was there to evaluate whether a productive collaboration could be established. The CEO greeted him with a professional yet sincere smile. There was no over-the-top flattery, no awkward gestures, just genuine acknowledgement. She extended her hand, and he shook it firmly, maintaining eye contact. The atmosphere, while slightly tense at first, began to relax as the conversation progressed. Both understood the importance of the interaction, and that mutual respect would be the foundation for any discussion. They started by discussing the CEO's company, its recent projects, and the challenges it faced. She spoke confidently about the vision and direction of the company, but also acknowledged areas where expertise and guidance could be valuable. She was careful to avoid exaggeration or defensiveness, presenting facts and insights clearly. The investor listened attentively, occasionally asking questions that demonstrated his deep understanding of business strategy and potential opportunities. As the conversation continued, the CEO noticed subtle ways in which the investor's questions highlighted his analytical skills and his ability to see beyond surface-level details. She realized that his approach was not just about numbers or profit. It was about understanding the dynamics of people, processes, and possibilities. This insight made her even more eager to engage with him fully. She began to feel a sense of relief that the meeting had started on a positive and professional note. The investor, for his part, observed the CEO's willingness to acknowledge her previous misstep. She was not defensive or dismissive. She was open, professional, and focused on the potential for collaboration. This openness reinforced his initial interest in the meeting. He could see that she was capable of recognizing value, admitting mistakes, and adapting her approach. These qualities were rare, and they signaled to him that a meaningful partnership could be possible. They discussed potential areas for collaboration, exploring how the investor's expertise and influence could complement the CEO's projects. The conversation was thoughtful, strategic, and grounded in mutual respect. The CEO presented her ideas clearly, highlighting both opportunities and challenges. The investor responded with practical insights, asking questions that encouraged deeper thinking and reflection. The dialogue was engaging and dynamic, with both participants contributing equally to the discussion. At one point, the CEO acknowledged the importance of trust and integrity in any partnership. She explained that she valued honest feedback and constructive guidance, and she expressed her commitment to working collaboratively and transparently. The investor appreciated this openness. He understood that effective collaboration required mutual trust, clear communication, and a willingness to listen and learn from one another. This shared understanding created a sense of alignment and purpose. As the meeting progressed, the CEO began to feel a growing sense of confidence. She realized that her initial dismissal of the investor had been a mistake, but she was grateful for the opportunity to correct it. She saw the value of humility, respect, and thoughtful engagement. The investor, in turn, recognized her sincerity and professionalism. He could see that she was capable of learning from experience, adapting her approach, and fostering meaningful connections. This recognition strengthened his interest in exploring collaboration further. Towards the end of the meeting, they discussed next steps. The CEO outlined specific areas where the investor's involvement could have a significant impact, and the investor provided guidance on how to prioritize initiatives, allocate resources, and optimize outcomes. They agreed on a plan to continue discussions, explore opportunities in detail, and evaluate potential projects collaboratively. The sense of mutual respect and understanding was evident in every aspect of the conversation. After the meeting, the CEO reflected on the experience. She had approached the interaction with humility, preparation, and sincerity, and the outcome had been positive. She recognized that her initial assumptions and biases had been flawed, and she felt a renewed appreciation for the importance of respect, professionalism, and thoughtful engagement. She understood that true influence and opportunity were built on collaboration, trust, and the ability to recognize value in others. The investor, meanwhile, left the meeting with a sense of satisfaction. The CEO had approached the situation with authenticity, professionalism, and openness. He could see the potential for meaningful collaboration, and he felt confident that the partnership could be productive and mutually beneficial. The meeting had reinforced his belief in the power of patience, respect, and thoughtful engagement. Both the CEO and the investor now understood that the encounter had marked a turning point. The initial cold reception was no longer a defining moment. Instead, it had become a catalyst for reflection, growth, and opportunity. The CEO had learned the importance of humility and thoughtful preparation, while the investor had reinforced his principles of professionalism, respect, and consistency. As they parted ways, both carried a sense of anticipation and purpose. The CEO felt motivated to follow through on the agreed plan and to demonstrate the value of collaboration. The investor looked forward to engaging further, confident that the next steps would lead to meaningful results. The interaction had set the stage for a partnership built on mutual respect, shared vision, and thoughtful engagement. By the end of the day, the CEO reflected on the lessons learned. She understood that true leadership was not about asserting authority or dismissing others based on assumptions. It was about recognizing talent, valuing contributions, and fostering relationships built on trust and respect. The investor, meanwhile, continued his work with quiet confidence, knowing that meaningful opportunities often arose from patience, professionalism, and the ability to see value where others might overlook it. The meeting had changed the dynamic completely. What had begun as a tense, awkward encounter had evolved into a productive, respectful, and engaging dialogue. Both parties had demonstrated professionalism, humility, and insight, setting the stage for future collaboration. The CEO now recognized the importance of approach, preparation, and sincerity, while the investor reaffirmed his belief in the power of patience, respect, and thoughtful engagement. The day ended with a sense of accomplishment and anticipation. The CEO had turned a potential setback into an opportunity, demonstrating growth and professionalism. The investor had engaged with a potential partner who valued expertise, integrity, and collaboration. Together, they had established the foundation for a relationship that could yield significant opportunities, insights, and success. The encounter had not only resolved the tension from the previous day, but had also created a new sense of possibility and potential for both of them. After their initial meeting, both the CEO and the investor felt a renewed sense of purpose. The tension from their first encounter had been replaced by a growing understanding and mutual respect. The CEO had learned the value of humility, preparation, and thoughtful engagement, while the investor had reinforced the power of patience, professionalism, and recognizing potential where others might overlook it. In the days following the meeting, the CEO followed up with a detailed plan outlining how the investor's involvement could benefit the company. She was careful to present facts clearly, showing both opportunities and potential challenges. She also highlighted the ways she had learned from the initial encounter and emphasized her commitment to collaboration and respect. Every word was chosen with care, reflecting her sincerity and professionalism. The investor reviewed the plan thoroughly. He appreciated the clarity, attention to detail, and willingness to learn from past experiences. He could see that the CEO had not only understood the value he brought, but had also taken steps to integrate his perspective into the company's strategy. This level of thoughtfulness was rare and signaled to him that the partnership could be both productive and meaningful. He responded with feedback, offering insights and guidance, but also affirming the CEO's approach and strategy. Over the next few weeks, they continued to meet regularly, discussing projects, potential investments, and strategies for growth. Each meeting was productive, focused, and respectful. The CEO demonstrated consistent improvement, applying the investor's feedback and showing adaptability in her decision-making. The investor, in turn, remained patient, professional, and encouraging, guiding without imposing, and supporting without overstepping. As the collaboration progressed, the CEO began to notice changes in her company as well as in herself. Her leadership style evolved, becoming more inclusive and thoughtful. She started to recognize talent and potential in ways she had not considered before. Employees responded positively to the shift, showing increased motivation, engagement, and trust. Projects began to move more smoothly, and the company's overall performance improved. The CEO understood that this transformation was not solely due to the investor's guidance, but also because of her willingness to learn and adapt. The investor observed these changes with satisfaction. He had worked with many companies, but few had responded to guidance with such openness and growth. He appreciated the CEO's dedication to improving herself and her company, and he saw the tangible impact of their collaboration. He also recognized the importance of patience and consistency in creating meaningful change, reaffirming his own approach to business and relationships. One day, during a particularly important meeting, the CEO acknowledged the investor's role in their progress. She spoke openly about how their interactions had challenged her assumptions, encouraged her growth, and contributed to the company's success. She emphasized that the lessons she had learned extended beyond business strategy, influencing her approach to leadership, respect, and collaboration. The investor responded with humility, noting that it was her willingness to learn and adapt that had made the difference. This acknowledgement marked a significant moment in their professional relationship. Both understood that the initial tension had been transformed into a foundation for respect, trust, and mutual benefit. The CEO had demonstrated growth, the investor had provided guidance and perspective, and the company had benefited as a result. The experience highlighted the importance of humility, reflection, and the ability to recognize and nurture potential in others. As time went on, their collaboration continued to yield positive results. The CEO implemented new strategies and initiatives based on the investor's insights, leading to increased efficiency, innovation, and profitability. The investor continued to offer guidance, support, and perspective, always maintaining a balance between influence and respect. Together, they created a partnership that was productive, professional, and mutually rewarding. The CEO also began to share the lessons she had learned with her team and peers. She emphasized the importance of respect, humility, and thoughtful engagement in building meaningful relationships. She shared how acknowledging mistakes and seeking guidance could lead to growth and opportunity. Her story became an example within the company of how professionalism, openness, and collaboration could transform challenges into successes. The investor, meanwhile, continued to build relationships and pursue opportunities, using the experience to reinforce his principles of patience, respect, and thoughtful engagement. He understood that influence was not about asserting power or demanding attention, but about consistently demonstrating competence, integrity, and value. The partnership with the CEO became one of many examples of how meaningful collaboration could lead to lasting impact. Eventually, the CEO and the investor reached a point where their work together had transformed not only specific projects but also the culture and outlook of the company. Employees felt more valued, leaders were more open to feedback, and the company's overall approach to strategy and decision-making became more collaborative and effective. The lessons from their initial encounter had rippled outward, affecting many aspects of the organization and creating a lasting legacy of respect and professional growth. Reflecting on the journey, both the CEO and the investor recognized how far they had come from that first awkward meeting. What had begun as a moment of dismissal and misunderstanding had evolved into a partnership built on mutual respect, professionalism, and shared purpose. The CEO had learned the value of humility and thoughtful engagement, while the investor had reaffirmed his approach to influence and collaboration. The experience left a lasting impression on both of them. The CEO understood that leadership was about more than authority or status. It was about recognizing talent, valuing contributions, and fostering relationships built on trust and respect. The investor saw that patience, professionalism, and the ability to guide without imposing could create opportunities and results that were both meaningful and lasting. In the end, the story of their interaction became a powerful example of growth, respect, and collaboration. It demonstrated how initial misjudgments could be overcome through humility, thoughtful engagement, and professionalism. It highlighted the importance of recognizing value in others and the potential for positive transformation when people are willing to learn, adapt, and work together. The partnership between the CEO and the investor continued to flourish, yielding both tangible results and intangible lessons. Their story became a reminder that even in high-pressure, competitive environments, respect, patience, and professionalism could open doors that arrogance and dismissal could close. They had both grown from the experience, and the lessons they learned would continue to influence their decisions, leadership, and relationships for years to come.